When you really listen to a great piece of jazz, it's so much more than just notes, right? You're hearing history. It's a whole story being told in rhythm and improvisation. But it's a story with two powerful and completely different beginnings.
All right, so the first story, this is the one we all kind of know and love. It paints jazz as this incredible art form, born out of pure survival. We're talking about music whose DNA wasn't forged in some fancy concert hall, but right in the heart of African-American history and cultural memory.
So, if you dig into the history, you'll see the core building blocks of jazz come straight from African musical traditions. But these weren't just stylistic choices. Things like polyrhythm, call and response, improvisation, these were more than just music. They were, cultural artifacts. They were tools for resilience, for communication, developed over hundreds of years.
Okay, let's zoom in on improvisation for a second, because this is huge. We always think of it as the soul of jazz, right? But it's so much more than just making stuff up on the fly. It's a direct line to a history of survival. It was a way to find your own voice, to claim a little bit of freedom when there was almost none to be had. It's this living, breathing conversation.
So the takeaway from this first story is pretty clear. Jazz is seen as this deeply, deeply authentic expression. It's literally the sound of a people carrying their entire history, the joy, the pain, and spinning it into an art form that is just electric, completely alive.
But what if that's not the whole picture? What if there's another way to hear it? Back in 1936, a European philosopher listened to the exact same music, and he heard something completely different. He didn't hear freedom. No, he heard a trap, a really, really well-designed trap.
Yeah, that critic's name was Theodor Adorno, and his take was, well, it was a bombshell. He basically said, nope, jazz isn't some organic expression of culture. He argued it was one of the first truly global commercial products, engineered from the ground up, not for art, but for the marketplace.
Okay, so here's how Adorno broke it down. He said all those wild, free-sounding improvisations, just decoration. That syncopation, that exciting offbeat rhythm that makes you want to move, he saw it as a trick, a little bit of chaos that always snaps right back to the relentless, rigid beat of the bass drum. And for him, those primitive or black elements, that was just branding, a coloristic effect, as he put it, to make the products sell better.
So what Adorno's saying here is a total 180. He's arguing that jazz is designed to make you think you're feeling something free and rebellious. But in reality, it's just reinforcing this super rigid commercial system. I mean, talk about a controversial idea, right?
Okay, so if Adorno didn't think the sound of jazz was a purely African-American tradition, where did he think it came from? Well, his answer is pretty surprising. He pointed his finger directly at the concert halls of Europe.
Get this. Adorno himself pointed out that a giant like Duke Ellington named European Impressionist composers, guys like Debussy, as some of his biggest influences. For Adorno, that was the smoking gun. He heard the DNA of European modernism hidden inside what everyone was calling this primitive American music.
And this is where his argument really clicks into place. See, in a concert hall, Impressionism was all about breaking rules, creating these hazy, subjective sounds. But Adorno's point was that jazz took those same complex, beautiful harmonies, watered them down, and shoved them into a tight, repetitive 8-bar box. The goal wasn't to break the rules anymore, it was to make a commercial product sound cool and sophisticated.
And his conclusion was pretty brutal. He used the word depraved. He really believed that jazz had corrupted these sophisticated musical ideas, stripped them of their soul, all just to sell records. He saw it as a cheap trick, basically, a borrowed style to make a product seem trendy.
And for Adorno, the effect this had on everyone, the listener, the musician, was devastating. He said it created a mutilated subject. That's intense, right? It's basically someone who thinks they're being spontaneous and free, but they're really just a consumer of a very, very controlled product.
But hang on. That's not where the story ends. Not even close. Decades later, artists and writers fired back with this incredibly powerful counter-argument. They reclaimed jazz, not as some cheap product, but as a profound form of resistance and healing.
One of the key ideas they used is something called cultural mourning. Now, this concept sees jazz as this amazing art form that's uniquely able to hold the collective trauma of an entire people. It's way more than a catchy beat. It's about giving a voice to loss, mixing the deep sorrow of the blues with the hopeful, forward-looking spirit of improvisation.
And the legendary author Toni Morrison?
She took this idea and ran with it in her novel, which she just called Jazz. The whole book is structured like a jazz composition. The narrator improvises, one chapter calls, and the next one responds. She wasn't just writing about jazz, she was using its very bones to tell a deeply African-American story. It was a direct rebuttal to that idea of a powerless jazz subject.
And Morrison just nails the magic of it with this quote. Jazz, she says, always leaves something held in reserve. It doesn't give you easy answers or fit in a neat little box. You can't just consume it and be done with it, which is the total opposite of a commercial product, right? No, it makes you listen again. It makes you lean in.
So here we are, left with this incredible tension, a real tale of two origins. On one hand, jazz is this ultimate symbol of cultural memory and resilience. And on the other hand, it's the poster child for the modern commercial culture industry. And that really leaves us with the big question, doesn't it? Is jazz one, or is it the other? Or, and this is what's really fascinating, could its true genius be that it's both at the exact same time? A music born from such deep pain and memory that it became so powerful, so irresistible that it was swallowed up and maybe even changed by the very marketplace it was supposed to resist. Now that's something to chew on the next time you put on a record.